Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, I guess. We're almost at the cusp of afternoon. It really is an honor to be here and to talk about personalized medicine. But what is personalized medicine? What does it mean to each of us? Personalized medicine today is rather a buzzword if you think about it. And it doesn't necessarily just refer to providing patients with customized treatments. In fact, it can refer to one of the many aspects that together drive this much larger patient-centric ecosystem. Again, what is it? What are some of the macro trends? Where do we stand today? And what does the future really hold? Our panelists today are here to talk just about that. Our panelists for this session are Dr. Andrew Carroll, who is the VP of Science at DNAnexus. Andrew, would you like to join me? We have Dr. Armin Spura, who is the VP of Product at WuxiNextCode. Armin? And then we have Mr. Mohan Iyer, who is the COO of Biome. Mohan? Well, I'd like to start off the session by asking our panelists to first take a few minutes and just share the nature of their work and a brief description of what their companies offer. Maybe we can start with Mohan and just get
Sure.
down.
Is this working? Everybody can hear me? Great. Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Swati. So I'm at a small emerging company called Biome, which is based out of San Francisco. We are at this very exciting intersection between the microbiome that are, thank you, John, for bringing it up and introducing the microbiome to us. If anybody is new to the microbiome, it's essentially a word that talks about all the organisms that live on us. And this is not just bacteria, but could be bacteria, fungi, viruses, phages, and so forth that are residing in the humans, largely in the human gut, but could be in skin and other places, and largely and increasingly understood as a key player in human health. So we have basically a platform technology that tries to elucidate the relationship between these bacteria and human health. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it, but in essence, the business model of the company is to take these products from this interesting work in a little different way than most people have done it. We're going in a non-pharmaceutical route to really take it to market as a food, a medical food, or a consumer product. So in essence, that's the go-to-market strategy for Biome. Again, for those of you who are at the fringes of this very emerging science, we're talking about 100 trillion microbes that are on each of you, and 1 billion bacteria in every sort of drop of fluid in a colon. So we're talking about thousands of species of bacteria. Many of them have never been cataloged. We have never had the technology to catalog this. These are bacteria that live on us. And we still haven't really understood who they are and what they do to a full extent. But the more we know about them, the more we know that they're key to human health and various conditions. They digest our food, clearly. They break down toxins. They turn genes on and off. They actually have more genes from the microbiome than there are human genes. They secrete key metabolites. We wouldn't have some key vitamins available to us if it were not for bacteria. Key hormones, secondary bile acids, for example, are only created, which is very key to human health, is only created because we have bacteria. So they're basically, if they're not healthy, we're not healthy, and we're trying to understand that. And I think John also pointed to this emerging area of immunotherapy, and it's how, for example, if you take the gut microbiome, based on the profile of the bacteria that's in your gut, you could be differentially responding to serious medications. Let's say you're going through cancer immunotherapy. It's very clear that certain microbiome respond and others don't. And that's a starting of a personalized medicine paradigm right there. And if you think about it a further minute, you'll see that, you'll think about the fact that we evolved into the world of bacteria. So that is, they were there before us. And so it's really our idea to sort of think about this and understand this. There are 3 enabling technologies we'll talk about some more, and some of our panelists here are also experts on this. Next-gen sequencing, and the deep learning and AI, which is very important, because if you live in the world of bacteria that we are thinking about, we have to sort of make it into a digital information, and there's a lot of information to process. So that's where deep learning and AI come into our company. And the third is cloud computing. And I know a lot of you are working on all these enabling technologies, and I wouldn't be here without you guys.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. Can you hear me as well? Sounds like it, yeah. Okay. Pleasure to be here, and welcome everybody. So I work for a company called WuxiNextCode. For those of you who have ever heard of WuxiAppTech, WuxiAppTech is a very big CRO company, probably among the world's biggest. WuxiNextCode is funded partly by WuxiAppTech, but it is a separate legal entity, separate different company. Our headquarters is in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in fact, and we also have big offices in Shanghai and Iceland. And so the mission of our company is to improve human health by making genomics actionable. So that already has a precision medicine component in it and a personalized medicine component, because you can only do that as you understand the individual genomes, because they vary, as you know, greatly. In that context, what we offer is a whole solution. We have a wet lab where we can do sequencing. We use usually next generation sequencing. We can then do analysis and interpretation of the information that comes back to us. We also use AI to enhance that, and then we have a data platform that allows us to very quickly compute over whole genomes in parallel fashion really quickly. So, for example, one of our target customers are all these population genomics projects, like Genomics England, the Qatar project, Singapore, and so forth. So we're really sort of globally engaged in these different projects. And another area that we support is diagnostic tests, in particular in China, and that is really where the precision medicine and personalized medicine comes into play, because what it means to me in the context of this company is really to speed up diagnostics. So one test that we have is around rare disease, specifically for pediatric care. What you often find there is that, so these rare diseases are usually genetic variations that maybe occur only 10,000 times in the whole world population. And cures are often not available, and the diagnostics for these kids is terrible because it basically takes years before they find out what the underlying cause of these diseases is. Now, with next generation sequencing and these tests that we and other companies now have available, the diagnostics is much, much faster. I mean, it can literally be a matter of a couple of days now to get the answer to what is the underlying cause of these types of disease. And then, of course, once you understand what the genetic mutation is, you can then maybe take a drug that's already on the market that you know that might target this particular gene, or come up with some other therapy. So that really is where the personalized medicine, in my view, plays a very important role.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Armin. Andrew? Sure.
Hello. Okay. Hi, my name is Andrew. I am head of science at DNAnexus. DNAnexus is a cloud-based informatics platform that works with customers that provide that do pharmaceutical R&D discovery, make clinical diagnostic tests, as well as consortia in academia and in government. So we're a purely informatics-based operation, and the way that we get exposed to the field of personalized medicine is the customers, for example, like WuxiNextCode, who are developing these tests, use our infrastructure and our compliant environment and our scientific expertise to build and deploy these tests. So we get to see the diversity of applications in areas like NIPT and oncology and rare disease. And so we kind of get a touch point into each of those areas in this very rapidly expanding field. A couple of the other things that we do, we develop informatics platforms for communities such as the Precision FDA, which is based a platform for comparison of genomic tools so that they can be understood and benchmarked, associated with the Precision Medicine Initiative and the St. Jude Pediatric Cancer Cloud. So we really get a very broad look into how this field is evolving over time.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, panelists. It's very exciting to see how all these companies can converge and add to this ecosystem, this building ecosystem of personalized medicine. What I really want to ask is, can you discuss maybe one challenge in personalized medicine that you've encountered in your work? Getting a product out into the field. One challenge. You want to start?
Table?
I'll start here. Maybe
We'll go
this way.
We'll go this way.
So I'm going to talk through a technical challenge and I think a broader social challenge. So a technical challenge is that the type of data in this space is incredibly diverse. Like EHR records are incredibly fragmented across a variety of providers. The sequencing technology varies dramatically based on who performed the sequencing, whether they did exomes or panels or genomes, and how they did that. So in a technical sense, having to deal with and understand messy or complex data is one of the key technical blockers. On a broader social sense, in order for personalized medicine to be seen as highly valuable, it has to speak to all different communities. And I think one of the challenges that we will have is that many of the current genomic resources that we have are dominated by ethnic European data sets. And since personalized medicine is fundamentally going to take the unique aspects of a person and drive actionable insight, if we don't ensure through kind of collective research effort that the genomic resources and their association with clinical phenotypes represent all populations, then there are going to be questions about how much of a benefit and how distributed that benefit is to broader society.
You certainly need a diverse data set, right, to drive those insights. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, just to add to actually the first technical point on the data sets, we experience this as well on a daily basis. So, let's take the field of oncology, for example, and when scientists want to query across diverse data sets, what that means is all these data sets arose from independent efforts, often from different universities, and the formats are very, very different. So there's no easy way to query across all these data sets in parallel unless you first reformat them and put them all in the same structure. And for biologists, that's almost impossible. So usually it's the bioinformaticians that are doing that. And what we do in our company is really do that for them so that we can actually then give that product to biologists. So that's the first point. The second point that I find a lot is there's a lack of reimbursement today for many of these technologies that are sort of underpinning personalized medicine. So NGS tests, for example, there are certainly some panels that are already reimbursed in the US, but it's not that many yet. Thermo Fisher actually just got one cleared with the FDA, right? But if you look at the broader sequencing, so whole genome and whole exome, where in the end you can get even more information out of that, and in the future I think that's where it's going to head to, none of these tests have yet been approved. They are available to customers who can pay for it. So what it creates is kind of a two-tier health system. Of course, we already have that in the US to some extent, but in other countries we didn't have that so much. When you look at the UK or Germany, pretty much the access to healthcare was kind of the same for everybody. But with this, the fact that now some of the tests are reimbursable and others are not, people who can afford it out of pocket will get to these tests, and others who cannot will not. And so our rare disease tests in China, for example, they're very widely available and adopted in cities like Shanghai and others, at Fudan Hospital, for example. But when you go to smaller towns or villages, there's very few people that can afford it, unfortunately. So that's a challenge, I think.
That's a good point. Mohan?
Great. Yeah, I'll share a challenge. It's actually a current challenge in our company, a very formidable challenge. And I'll make a long scientific story short. Microbes or different types of microbes can actually allow you to lose weight. So in other words, we have mouse models where a microbiome change alone can actually result in weight loss and a reduction in type 2 diabetes markers. So essentially our main product we're going after is something that you can take, like a probiotic, let's say, fully backed by science, that essentially allows you to lose weight and for a diabetic to get better control of A1C. Works beautifully in mice. The problem with humans is that the diet that different humans have is a very big confounder. And so when you apply personalized medicine and think through this, and when you take it to the human market, we really need amazing amount of tools to understand the variations in human diets and how that plays a role in our innovation. We have no doubt that it works in the basic biology that people have been thinking about in pharmaceutical science. But when you think about bringing it to market, it has formidable challenges that really rely on very many data sources, working the data into the right formats, analyzing the data to, it's a very formidable challenge. So we have some expert minds working on this, deconvoluting diet from therapy, and this is one of the big challenges for us.
Yeah, I want to talk about, this field is just so regulated. Everything about personalized medicine, the products any product that can help diagnose or can possibly diagnose a patient is, this field is just so regulated. I want to have a quick conversation about what are some of the regulatory challenges that each of you have faced when launching a product or when launching a software, for instance. Just what are some of the common challenges in terms of regulatory?
Sure. So maybe this speaks more to my experience at my previous company, Thermo Fisher. In fact, I was involved in Ion Torrent, next generation sequencing systems. And we had this instrument called the PGM, and the first time we submitted something to the FDA, and kind of the same challenge that Illumina faced was, this was the first time an NGS system was submitted to the FDA, and it takes 3 years and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars to get that kind of clearance. So the big challenges are the amount of money involved that really only companies with deep pockets can afford. And if you're trying to bring an innovative technology to the market for the first time through the FDA, the time involved. And one other aspect I can speak to is the regional knowledge you need to have if you want to bring it to market in other countries and need to get regulatory clearance. So for example, I was involved a lot with the Chinese FDA, trying to get some clearance through a joint venture I was working on. There you really have to have local knowledge and you have to have ties to the government just so that you can speed things up, because you usually compete with other entities that have these ties, and if you don't have these ties, then it takes you, let's say, 3 years, but the ones that have the ties, it takes them 1.5 years for the same kind of process. So it's the local knowledge and kind of connections to the right people in these processes. So that's what I found on the regulatory side.
That's a good point. Yeah, thank you.
Really not a great guy to answer this question, but I think it's because it always gets you into trouble a little bit. But I'd say one of the inspiring things about being in the Valley, and I hope you guys can feel what I'm trying to say, is we're not afraid to break things, but to do the right thing though. So if I know that my intervention is extremely safe and is highly beneficial to people, we'll find a way to get it through. Now, that's not exactly how the FDA works. I think that, and what we're talking about is a food, and what we're talking about is a food that, well, pretty much everybody should take. So this is a major problem that we have to face as in the regulatory side, and it's an extremely important issue. So for us, it's really about great science to make sure that before we launch a product, we are 100% sure that it works. And the second is safety. Now, safety is tough because that's, when you have, and this actually works in data, when you have a training set and you expand it to the real set, wow, things happen, things break. So when you have a product that's well tested even on 1,000 people and you release it to the millions of people, there are going to be things that we don't know. So we think that the system of how things are regulated actually is an important issue. And we're at a place, interestingly, in our time when the FDA has been this is the most favorable the FDA has been in terms of pro-industry. So we're trying to figure out the way through this for ourselves, but it's a very challenging question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so to speak to this, I'd like to talk with our experience in Precision FDA, which was a platform that was commissioned and built on behalf of the FDA. So when we were first discussing Precision FDA, the FDA realized that they wanted to figure out how they should regulate the space of genomics, but they had to have this trade-off between, they didn't want to be seen as shutting down innovation in the space. They were also aware that if genomic tests are misapplied, it can undermine confidence in the space. And at the same time, they realized it was such a young field, if they come in and say you have to do A or B, then the field will resist that. Say you're preventing life-saving treatments from getting into patient hands. So they had a very unique approach in Precision FDA. Precision FDA held a series of open competitions where algorithm developers from the community could put their tools into the framework and could take a benchmark set and demonstrate the accuracy of their tests. And this served as a substrate for the community to gain confidence that the FDA wanted to listen to the community concerns in the regulatory space, and also built understanding in the FDA about what's a good test, what's valid, what's accurate. And a number of new methods, including some very interesting AI and deep learning based methods, came out of those competitions. So I think that you see within genomics in personalized medicine a unique opportunity to change the historical dynamic between regulatory bodies like the FDA. And I would further just echo the comment that I think the current environment is more favorable than it's been for kind of pushing innovative development, at least that I can remember.
Thank you. So it looks like we're kind of closing into our 5-minute mark. What I do want to do is I want to ask one question, then I want to open it up to a couple of questions that I'm sure you guys have for our panelists. So our last question here is, what are some of the key drivers that are driving this field, and what can we anticipate in the next 5 years?
I'll just mention one. I think one of the key that's driving is people. Is we are taking charge. We have more information than ever before about our own health. And we have the means and the ability to change this. And that, I don't think, has ever been this is at an all-time peak, and I believe it's at the trough, meaning we have a long way to go in accomplishing control over the variables that control our lives, particularly health. And health is very important to us, but we have entrusted it into a mysterious realm, into a realm of things that we don't understand, things that there are too many variables and so forth. So I think that's actually the key driver, is people like you in the audience who say they want to control their health, and they're looking for things, and the internet certainly makes it easy to find these things and to adopt these things.
Yeah, that's actually a great thought. A couple of other things that I was thinking of is, number one, cost is a driver, in a sense that cost will really go down for these technologies that underlie the precision medicine. So NGS, when you talk to Illumina, they will tell you currently it's about $1,000 per genome on the cost side. In 5 years, they anticipate this to be about $150. So, that probably means you can get it for $250 or so. And when that happens, a lot of the tests will shift over from specific panels to more whole genome and those types of analysis. That's one. The other one I would say is there's so many new technologies emerging still, especially oncology. We have all this immuno-oncology therapies, we have liquid biopsy, those types of things that will enable you to tailor-make treatments even more to specific cancers. And then the third one I was going to point out is more about reimbursement. I talked about this earlier. I do think that as time passes and as more and more clinical utility is proven by these new technologies, we will see more reimbursement getting adopted, and hopefully, therefore, these technologies will become available to everybody in the health system.
Thank you.
So everything is driven by clinical utility and value to the patient. And right now you see some of the first developments in personalized medicine that are driving this. So there's been a disruptive technology, non-invasive prenatal testing, which is replacing amniocentesis. I strongly suspect that within a small number of years, this is going to be standard of care in all pregnancies, not just in advanced maternal age pregnancies. You see right now, oncology, cancer is an inherently genomic disease. This is going to be the next major area. It's in the middle of breaking through. There's going to be rare newborn disorder sequencing. Something like 2 to 4% of all newborns have some form of genetic condition or disorder. So look for the areas that are going to provide the highest value in the most immediate time frame. And the time span for these ranges from right now, in the case of NIPT, to I think easily within 5 years for many of those other technologies.
Thank you. Well, with that, we're going to close our session, but I am going to open it up to a couple of questions that I think we have. We have one right there waiting. I can throw my mic to you.
My question is, I know you guys, three of you are expert in your domain, and you are specifically helping in particular areas. Do you have a specific example for a particular patient in your research that you think that you help and achieve that?
I'll actually give that one a shot. So we work at a place called Rady Children's Hospital. Rady Children's Hospital does rapid sequencing on infants that end up in the NICU, basically after birth. There is a case study where they sequenced 6 newborns and had an aggregate saving of $2 million. One of those newborns they could not figure out what was wrong with her. And they were going to do an exploratory surgery on her liver to try to ascertain what was occurring. And this occurs very rapidly, because it's 3 days after birth, and they can't figure out why there's this life-threatening condition. And when that infant was on the operating table, the genomic analysis arrived and indicated that they could give a conclusive diagnosis to that newborn's condition, and were able to call up and prevent a procedure which had I think a 42% morbidity rate. So if you Google Rady Children's Hospital advanced sequencing, there's an academic paper you can read that will go through the details of these 6 cases that were saved an aggregate of $2 million.
Thank you.
Can I ask?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
I just heard that Mr. I was talking about the importance of role of diet as well as lifestyle in personalized medicine. So if that is being said that, so is it that the bacterial genome and the human genome, as it interacts, forms the epigenome. So should that be the personalized medicine should be more focused on the epigenomes than just the bacterial genomes? And if that is true, what is the time period so that the epigenomes get matured, then we can start prescribing the personalized medicine?
I was hoping you would answer that for me. So if I understand you right, you're asking how does the human genome and the epigenome work together, and which is the driver of which, and how long does it take?
Yeah, so what's the threshold of where we start prescribing based on that? Because you already mentioned that there is a role for the lifestyle and food.
Right. I actually do not have an answer for you, but it's a great question.
Thank you.
So if it's okay, I'd like to try and answer that question. So epigenetics is a very new field, and I think we're still learning a lot about how the epigenetics, how these factors are modulated within our genomes and how they turn on and turn off certain genes. So I think there's a lot of studies that are needed still to confer what epigenetic marks we're really looking at, to tie that into microbiome, and then looking at the eventual lifestyle and diet and seeing how does that at the end of the day benefit a patient. So I think there's a lot of studies that are still needed. It is headed in that direction. However, I don't think we have a clear answer just yet. It's a brand new field, and I think there's a lot to do there for us. And I think tools like next generation sequencing will certainly help us get one step closer. Sure, most certainly.
Yeah. I've been listening from yesterday, many of the talks, but on the artificial intelligence, you were talking that it will be one of the areas which will be taking cancer solutions faster. I am running a cancer hospital back in India. I'm a doctor myself. The reason why I'm asking you this question is, we have even more inherent problems right now in cancer where you have the data, but we don't have the answers. Let me just first give you one example is that, take the subset of the patients who are already cancer patients. How many of them will get metastasis? Is an unanswered question. That data set doesn't require any extra effort because it is already available. But to use that patient set to even predict that whether this patient is going to be having metastasis or not, we don't have the digital solutions for that. Now, under these kind of conditions, what makes you confident that you will be able to use a liquid biopsy to rule out that a child will not have cancer when the child is going to be 60 years? So this is something which you need to think about it. I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but we have much more immediate requirements in oncology than the ones what you are proposing.
Yes, thank you for that. No, I think because we're both working in the same area on this, and I can tell you we have a whole team of AI specialists that are currently looking at these large data sets like TCGA and others to try to come up with predictions and test these hypotheses that hopefully will one day help with exactly the scenario that you're talking about. And I agree with the viewpoint that liquid biopsy, it's still early stage actually for those technologies, and it remains to be seen with how many different cancer subtypes it can actually be successful. So.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to talk quickly to this. So AI isn't about making new data. If we had an infinite amount of time, humans could probably write heuristics that would unlock all of the information that you talk about. So the reason that AI is powerful is that it presents frameworks that in an automated way can determine insight without a human needing to craft those heuristics. So the fact that we're drowning in, like I look at the field, because I'm an algorithm developer, and I look at some of these problems, and I think I just don't have the time, nor do I potentially have the underlying wisdom to consider all these different variables and cofactors and higher order operations. And the reason that we're interested in exploring AI and ML is to the realization that we're strongly bandwidth limited on human time and wisdom, and we can potentially write frameworks that unlock this in a much more fundamental way.
Great. Thank you so much. With that, we're going to close our session. I'd like to thank the panelists again for an exciting, interesting, very in-depth information about all this field, but I'd also like to move on to our next session now. And thank you again for all your questions. We really appreciate it.